Welcome, this is a review of Palworld, a game made by PocketPair. I reviewed this game as a version 0.1.4.1, and from the perspective of a casual gamer that works full-time. Is it worth your time investment? Gauge for yourself as we cover the fundamentals. Full disclosure, this game is way more enjoyable when playing with friends, but the review is going to be from the vantage point of someone new diving into this game solo. Straight to business, the price of $29.99 on Steam seemed reasonable, given there's a lot of mechanics. Similarly, the download of 19.22 gigabytes felt warranted. I played this game on Steam initially with mouse and keyboard before transitioning to controller. So worth noting here, the controller support was heavily slanted towards Xbox, but I did get it working with a PS4 controller. However, the controller prompts seen in the game remained mapped to Xbox controllers, so I ended up jumping while trying to craft constantly. Much of my growing pains in the game were caused primarily by muscle memory and cursor sensitivity issues. So let's talk about starting the game. You're greeted with an attractive user interface and game HUD, which are easy to parse. Palworld has a character creator, which is impressive when you see it. After messing around with it, it loses a bit of its luster, as with most games it has a finite list of options. Still, it's a welcome feature and allows for a lot of funny combinations. Overall, the human NPCs throughout the game have fairly uninspired character models, so maybe the real adventure is in all the pals we met along the way. Once the player is done creating their likeness, they log in ready to see the vast, beautiful open world that Palworld has in store, and if you're as lucky as I was, you start in the night with frost surrounding your screen as you slowly begin dying. Despite having a rocky start with the controls and frostbite, it was nice to see I could read about the game mechanics at my leisure in an easy-to-find guide section of the menu system. Between the keybinds, the written tutorials, and similar information hidden in the menus, eventually the mechanics begin to make sense. So after players get over their survival concerns, there are some cool sights to behold. Walking around the green fields and seeing a level 38 mamma rest right off the cuff left a really good sense of wonder and excitement. Before we speak about the mechanics of PALs, let's talk about a misconception I had. Palworld is first and foremost a survival game, with a great deal of catch-em-all mixed in. It really felt like a combination of Epic Games' Fortnite Lego mode smashed together with Pokemon mechanics. If you like games like Ark Survival or Minecraft, then Palworld will make you feel right at home. If you're expecting to play a JRPG that has a split between monster hunting and advancing a story plot, that's just not going to happen. The story's forgettable because there basically isn't one in Palworld. Disclaimer aside, pals are the big draw, and as one might expect, you throw pal spheres with a % chance to capture the pal. The odds seem to be rooted primarily in remaining health, but other conditions like the quality of this sphere do affect the chance. Of note, if the pal is rendered unconscious, throwing a pal sphere at it won't do anything productive. They'll just become cute beach volleyballs you can roll around as you chuckle at the physics engine. New players will likely be frustrated if they miss or accidentally throw a pal sphere because it won't be recoverable. This is especially painful when you're throwing higher grade spheres, only for a pal to suddenly move out of the way, or more often than not, your pals annihilate the creature you're trying to catch. Early on, with limited resources, it feels frustrating. Later on, it still is, but you take a lot more precautions so it happens less. Let's talk a little bit more about pals. Pals are the monsters, although you can also capture humans in the game. On the topic of morally bankrupt behavior, you can butcher your pals, you can buy your pals, and you can sell your pals. And yes, that includes humans that you capture. Assuming you choose to put your pals to work instead, your pals and people will aid you in all aspects of the game, from combat to exploration, crafting, gathering, even acting as living shields in some cases. Palworld is packed with how much you can do to and with your pals. You can even find eggs, which can be incubated and hatched. You can splice duplicate pals together, and there seems to be a breeding option as well, but I didn't get around to it. As a pro tip, I recommend you grab a pal that can be used as a mount, such as the wolf, early on, and prioritize unlocking its pal gear, which is effectively a species-specific saddle. Everything else is part of the charm of exploring Palworld, and encountering your first lucky pal is really cool. It's basically the equivalent of a shiny Pokemon. It's impressive and addictive to explore the pal system, at least once you've unlocked the talent and crafting trees necessary to see its true potential. To do so, you'll need to advance your base via the Gather, Craft, Upgrade loop. This is honestly the massive majority of the game, despite the wonderfully entertaining pal system. For the first several hours, you'll spend time cooking and consuming food so you and your pals don't starve to death or lose your sanity, which is an in-game mechanic. You'll gorge yourself on baked berries. The base itself has a magical line indicating where the boundary of your guild is. For solo play, this is effectively your base area. There are benefits to being within the confines of your area, such as having access to all stored materials while you're crafting, and not having to clutter your inventory with it all. The base upgrades will unlock new crafting recipes and new facilities that you can build, and the loop itself unlocks quality of life items such as better tools, an auto-consuming food bag, a cooler to prevent food from spoiling. This is the primary game loop, and just like with pals, it's well fleshed out and motivates you to keep playing. Thankfully, the pals help you with crafting because it certainly feels tedious for a lot of repetitive tasks like the food. Further, the crafting of some of these things is really slow, like excruciating without help. On a positive note, the snapping of building pieces felt intuitive, such as placing a roof on top of a wall. Granted, I did little more than put a roof over my bed in terms of building a base, but there are plenty of options for those who enjoy the building of a village aspect in many survival games. Eventually, your base will become relatively self-sufficient and populated with hopefully happy workers. It's around then players will likely experience a raid where pals or pillagers or both will come and attack your base. That said, in our playthrough at least, it was really nothing to worry about. Our pals decimated every raider easily. Combat itself feels really good and clunky at the same time. There are some glitches which are to be expected given the version number that Palworld's at. They happen, but not so often or breaking that it takes away from the enjoyment of the game. I think what made the game feel clunky was the relatively slow movement of your character and how helpless you feel when you're fighting a boss. You hope and you pray it targets your pal because you're relegated to hit and run tactics. Further, riding a mount is just so much faster and more convenient than using stamina or dodging. So while combat is fun, it feels a bit restrictive if you don't have a mount. It does also highlight how rewarding the prep time is though. Spending time advancing your pals and crafting poison arrows really pays off come the boss fight. Combat is rich in systems such as status effects, plenty of weapon options, an elemental advantage wheel, and of course mounted combat. These systems do outweigh the clunky character movement. Overall, Palworld felt a bit frustrating and more of a time sink than I would normally prefer for a game without expansive lore or really responsive combat controls. Still, what it does well, it does very well. As a casual gamer with a full-time job, I recommend Palworld for those who love crafting survival games, especially if you have a friend or a loved one to join in on the fun. I'm Maverick with Owl Knights Media, and I'd appreciate it if you click the like button on this video. Subscribe if you want more videos for casual adult gamers, or visit us at owlknightsmedia.com to find our podcast, where we talk about developing our own indie game and the industry at large. Happy gaming, friends.